If you've ever poured your soul into something you thought would change the world, only to watch someone else run away with it, then this story is for you. Hi, my name is Claire. And this is the story of how I went from hopeful tech dreamer to legal powerhouse. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Before we dive in, I just want to say, if you're into true stories of betrayal, business drama, and shocking revenge twists, please consider subscribing to Karma Encrypted. It's one simple click, but it means the world to storytellers like me. Thank you. Now, let's rewind. I was 26 when I first had the idea that would eventually get stolen. It didn't come to me in a flashy brainstorm or some all-night coding session. No, it came from my struggle. I was freelancing at the time, barely making rent in a studio apartment I shared with my cat, Jasper, and a million sticky notes. I was constantly trying to match brands with the right creators, YouTubers, TikTokers, podcasters, you name it. The problem was, the process was broken. Influencers were guessing what companies wanted, and companies were spending thousands on agencies that rarely delivered. And then it hit me. What if there was a platform that connected brands and creators using AI? One that learned from past collaborations, tracked performance metrics, and matched campaigns based on values, tone, audience compatibility. Everything? I called it Pitch Pair. A fusion of data science, marketing intuition, and creator economics. Imagine Tinder, but for brands and influencers. Swipe right but with money behind it. I started sketching it out right there in my kitchen. I still have the coffee-stained paper where I drew the core algorithm logic. Matching tiers, profile scores, engagement thresholds. My excitement was electric. I could see it working. And more than that, I felt like I was solving a real problem. For months I worked in secret. I designed user flows in Figma, mapped back-end logic on Notion, even hired a developer from Upwork to help me test the MVP in Firebase. I pitched it to 2 mentors, both of whom said it had series of potential if done right. I bought the domain. I trademarked the name. I even filed a provisional patent for the algorithmic structure. But there was one thing I didn't do, and it would come back to haunt me. I didn't guard my circle tightly enough. Her name was Brielle Hawthorne. We'd met at a Women in Tech panel in Austin. She was charming, sharp, and had just sold her SaaS tool for remote HR onboarding. She came up to me afterward, said she liked my questions during the panel, and suggested coffee. At first I thought nothing of it. We met up a few times. She seemed genuinely curious about my work, and she had tons of advice about scaling, investors, go-to-market. I felt seen. Valued. Maybe a little starstruck. When she asked if I wanted to collaborate on a potential accelerator pitch, I said yes, with enthusiasm. We shared Google Docs, Zoom calls, Loom videos. At one point, she even requested a walkthrough of my MVP so she could tweak it for investor language. I gave it all freely. And then, silence. She ghosted me. Emails unanswered. Texts ignored. Her socials went dark. My gut clenched. Something felt off. 2 months later, a friend sent me an article. New startup, PearSpark, raises $5.4 million in seed funding to revolutionize brand influencer collaborations. The headline hit me like a punch. I opened the link and nearly choked. The landing page was mine. Not just similar. Identical flow, same terminology, the same matching logic, same user tiers. The pitch pair concept had been copy-pasted, repackaged under a new name, and presented as if it were hers all along. The press loved her. Serial entrepreneur strikes again, they said. Innovative approach to influencer tech, they praised. But I knew every single line of code. Every decision behind that platform had come from me. And suddenly, my vision, my late nights, my caffeine-fueled breakthroughs, my entire roadmap, belonged to someone else. I sat in my apartment shaking. Not crying. Not yet. Just stunned. She hadn't just taken an idea. She'd taken my future. But if you think this is where I gave up, you don't know me. This is just the beginning. Betrayal doesn't always come with blood or broken glass. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a polished press release. One with your stolen dreams dressed in someone else's logo. I must have read the TechVerse article 5 times in a row. Every line hurt. Every screenshot of PearSpark's platform stabbed deeper. I wasn't being paranoid. Brielle Hawthorne had taken my idea, my execution, and my strategy, and passed it off as her own. And the world was cheering for her. I spent the next few hours rage scrolling through her launch event photos. There she was, arms around VCs, clinking glasses of champagne with angel investors, giving staged interviews where she claimed she had the spark for the idea after struggling to find brand matches for her own podcast. A complete lie. She never even hosted a podcast. I opened our old emails. There were dozens, subject lines like, pitch pair algorithm logic, update to back-end sorting tier, attached, mock-up deck for slide bean. There were screenshots, screen recordings, even shared files in Google Drive, all clearly time-stamped under my name. I wasn't just fuming. I was on the verge of an emotional meltdown. And yet, I was too stunned to cry. That night, I took Jasper and sat on the cold kitchen floor with a glass of stale rose. I stared at my whiteboard where the words, pitch pair, disrupting discovery were still scribbled. It felt like someone had walked into my house, stolen the blueprint of my dreams, and built a mansion next door with my materials. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. By morning, I had moved past grief. Now I wanted war. But first, I needed confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. I sent the link to Brielle's site to 2 of my developer friends, both of whom had helped test my MVP early on. Their responses were instant and damning. Bro, this is your UX flow line for line. She even kept the term, compatibility waiting. You coined that. They were as outraged as I was. One of them, Tony, even dug into the site's back-end structure and confirmed something even worse. The initial codebase was nearly identical to what we'd used in Firebase. She hadn't just stolen the idea. She'd cloned my MVP and rebranded it. The betrayal ran deep. I couldn't shake the last Zoom call I'd had with Brielle. She had asked about the platform's potential scaling flaws, smiled so sweetly when I offered to share the solution I'd found, and then disappeared. A clean exit. She never even gave me the courtesy of a breakup email. By the end of that week, PearSpark had secured a $5.4 million seed round. Investors included some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley, one of whom had also heard my elevator pitch at a networking event last year. Suddenly, the betrayal wasn't just personal. It was professional. My whole network had been looped in without even knowing they were encouraging a thief. I thought about calling her. I imagined what I'd say, the fury, the questions, the shattered trust. But then I picture her smug voice telling me it was just business. And I hung up before even dialing. I was naive. I thought my passion protected me. I thought friendship guaranteed integrity. I was wrong. Brielle had the connections, the clout, and now the checkbook. But I had something she didn't expect. Documentation. I gathered every email, every screenshot, every shared folder. I made a backup of the early MVP, dated and labeled. I even pulled our Slack conversations from that brief collab phase. Each file, each timestamp, each voice memo, a breadcrumb in the trail of truth. And then I contacted a lawyer. Her name was Danica Curry, a tech IP specialist with a reputation for being surgical and savage. She picked up my call, and after hearing just 10 minutes of my story, she said, "Claire, this is one of the cleanest IP theft cases I've seen in years." Still, she warned me, the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Brielle had deep pockets now, powerful backers, and no shame. The legal fight would be brutal, expensive, and public. I could lose more than just the code. I could lose my peace, my time, my reputation. But I had already lost too much to stay silent. Danica gave me one task before we filed anything. Write a full narrative timeline. From idea conception to MVP build, to the collaboration with Brielle, to the moment I found out. I spent 3 sleepless nights writing it, with tears, with fury, with clarity. Every moment from the spark to the betrayal was laid bare. And when I hit send on that document, something shifted. I wasn't just a betrayed founder anymore. I was a plaintiff. And PearSpark? They were about to feel the heat of justice. The law doesn't move quickly, but when it moves in your favor, it can shake entire empires. After I sent Danica Curry my full case file, she responded with just one sentence. "We're going to bury them in the truth." Those words felt like a life raft. For weeks, I had been drowning in betrayal, watching Brielle Hawthorne shine in the spotlight that should have been mine. But now, I had an ally who didn't just believe me. She had the teeth to fight back. And fight we did. Step 1. Cease and desist. Danica drafted a letter so sharp it practically drew blood from the screen. It outlined, in excruciating detail, every piece of intellectual property stolen, from MVP codebase similarities to brand terminology. We attached side-by-side screenshots, server logs, timestamps, Git commits, and Slack history. The kicker? We included a 72-hour deadline. Remove all stolen IP and issue a public apology, or face immediate litigation. The letter was delivered by courier to Pear Spark's glossy new office downtown. They had a modern space filled with glass walls, hanging succulents, and interns who probably had no clue the company was built on theft. We waited. No response the first day. Second day. Silence. On the third day, just before the deadline, an email arrived from Hollister & Rames LLP, one of the top corporate firms on the West Coast. Brielle had lawyered up. Her legal team was smug, oily, and full of spin. Their response dismissed our claim as unsubstantiated and coincidental, and referred to Pear Spark as a unique innovation birthed from Brielle's personal journey. They had the audacity to accuse me of exaggerating a brief and informal creative discussion. They offered no apology, no retraction, no settlement, just war. I'll never forget what Danica told me that night. They think this is David versus Goliath. Let's not forget who actually won that one. We filed suit the following Monday. The claims were clear. Misappropriation of trade secrets, breach of implied contract, copyright infringement, unfair competition. The lawsuit hit the press like a lightning bolt. TechCrunch, Wired, even Business Insider ran headlines. Startup darling accused of IP theft by former collaborator. Pear Spark legal battle brews over stolen algorithm. From founder to fraud? Brielle Hawthorne faces lawsuit. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had a voice. And the industry was listening. Behind the scenes, it was brutal. Brielle launched a PR campaign framing me as a disgruntled former friend, trying to profit off her success. She painted herself as a self-made visionary, even going on a podcast claiming I was just one of many brainstorming partners during her ideation phase. It hurt. But the documents didn't lie. Danica brought in a forensic tech expert, a specialist in code lineage and software audit trails. He combed through my Firebase backend and compared it to Pear Spark's launch stack. His conclusion? 90% match across framework, variable structure, and query logic. This is a clone. That expert would later become our key witness. The deposition. That's where things got personal. Brielle was forced to sit, under oath, across from me in a glass conference room. She wore designer heels and a smirk that looked thinner by the minute. Danica started slow. Warm questions. Basic facts. Then she pounced. Miss Hawthorne, can you explain this time-stamped email from Claire Winters titled, Final MVP Flow and Slide Deck, which you acknowledged and replied to on June 12, 2 weeks before your company filed its incorporation? Brielle flinched. Danica didn't stop. One by one, she laid out the evidence. Shared Slack messages. Cloud storage logs. Version histories. It was like watching a magician reverse engineer a lie in real time. Brielle's answers got shakier. Her lawyer kept objecting. The smirk vanished. By the end of the session, I felt something shift. Not victory, but vindication. But victory was still far off. The court process dragged on for months. There were delays, procedural hearings, attempts to settle under NDA, all of which I rejected. I didn't want hush money. I wanted truth. I wanted people to know that ideas are sacred, and stealing them has consequences. In the meantime, the emotional toll was severe. I lost sleep. I lost weight. Friends distanced themselves, unsure what side to take. Investors who had once praised my vision now ghosted me. I felt like I was fighting alone, except for Danica, who never wavered. Some nights I cried. Some nights I screamed. But I never stopped believing that this fight mattered. Because it wasn't just about me. It was about every creator, founder, and underdog who's ever been robbed and told to get over it. As the trial date neared, something happened that nearly broke me. Pear Spark announced a Series A round. $18 million in funding. I stared at the press release in disbelief. How could investors still support her? Danica, calm as always, said, "The higher they climb, the farther they fall." And she was right. Because what Brielle didn't know, or didn't believe, was that we had more. A whistleblower. One of her junior developers, recently laid off, came forward anonymously. He contacted Danica with encrypted messages, screenshots of internal Slack convos, and most importantly, a video recording of a PairSpark team meeting where Brielle said, "Claire's not gonna do anything. She's soft. By the time she gets a lawyer, we'll be too big to touch." That recording became the linchpin of our case. We filed a supplemental brief with the court. And this time, even her own attorneys looked nervous. The courtroom showdown was next. The stakes were clear. This was no longer a small skirmish between two women in tech. It had become a defining battle over what it means to own your voice. And what happens when someone tries to steal it. They say justice is blind, but on the first day of court, I hope she could at least hear me. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and eerily quiet for a case that had taken the tech world by storm. I sat beside Danica, my nerves hidden beneath a navy blazer and a poker face I'd practiced in the mirror for weeks. Across the aisle sat Brielle Hawthorne, poised, polished, and wearing a custom power suit like this was just another startup pitch. She wouldn't be smiling for long. Opening arguments began with her lawyers spinning the same tired narrative. Brielle was a visionary, I was a collaborator at best, and any similarities between PitchPair and PairSpark were coincidental and common in the influencer tech space. I could barely keep my jaw from locking. When it was Danica's turn, she stood with the quiet intensity of a chess grandmaster. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is not about inspiration. It's about intellectual property theft. This isn't an idea taken in passing. This is a blueprint, a product, and a future stolen in full." She handed the judge a thick binder, color-coded, indexed, every piece of evidence mapped with forensic precision. Then she played the video. On the courtroom screen, the jury watched as Brielle, sitting in a glass conference room with her executive team, laughed and said, "Claire's not going to do anything. She's too soft. By the time she hires a lawyer, we'll be too big to touch." The room went silent. Brielle's lawyer visibly sank into his chair. The judge raised her eyebrows, then looked down at the notes in front of her. That moment changed everything. Over the next few days, the courtroom became a theater of truth. Danica called our expert witness, the software auditor. He broke down how my Firebase MVP code was not just similar, it was copied verbatim in key structures. The logic model, the weight distribution, even custom variable names. Side-by-side diagrams projected overhead made the theft impossible to ignore. Then came the whistleblower, we'll call him Ethan, to protect his identity. He appeared via closed video, his voice disguised for privacy. Ethan testified that Brielle had internally acknowledged the source of her platform. She told us the original version came from a girl she met at a panel. She said it was easier to copy than to build from scratch. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. The jury looked disgusted. Even the judge leaned back, visibly processing the depth of the deception. But the most powerful moment came when I took the stand. I wasn't coached to cry. I wasn't coached to perform. Danica told me, "Just tell your truth." So I did. I walked them through my first sketches of PitchPair. I explained how I'd worked nights to build it while bartending to pay bills. I described the moment Brielle asked for access to my mock-ups. I read aloud from emails she'd sent, praising the algorithm and asking for deeper back-end logic. My voice cracked once when I said, I didn't think someone would ever look me in the eye, take what I built, and walk away like it was nothing. By the time I stepped down, the courtroom felt like it had been through a storm. The closing arguments were swift. Danica looked the jury in the eye and said, "You cannot copyright an idea, but you can protect the execution of it. Claire Winters didn't just have a dream. She built a platform. She documented it. She nurtured it. And someone else took it, on purpose, and monetized it like a parasite." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The evidence had already shouted for us. When the jury returned with the verdict, I held my breath. It didn't take long. Liability. Confirmed. Breach of contract. Confirmed. Damages awarded. $8.1 million. Injunction against PairSpark operations. Immediate. I didn't cry. I exhaled. Brielle sat motionless. No tears. No rage. Just stone silence. As her legal team packed up their files, she shot me one final glance. It wasn't apologetic. It wasn't remorseful. It was empty, like a thief who realized the vault was rigged from the beginning. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Reporters shouted questions. I gave one brief statement. This wasn't just about money. It was about ownership. About truth. Founders deserve protection. We aren't stepping stones. We're the foundation. And with that, I walked away. In the weeks that followed, PearSpark collapsed. Investors pulled out. Partners terminated contracts. Their seed capital was frozen pending restructuring. The press labeled Brielle the Elizabeth Holmes of influencer tech. Meanwhile, PitchPair went viral. Organically. Creators rallied behind me. My inbox overflowed with stories from other entrepreneurs who had been silenced, dismissed, or robbed. I didn't become a millionaire overnight. But I did become something better. Respected. And for those who think lawsuits are too expensive, too messy, or too long, yes, they are. But sometimes, the fight is the price of keeping your name clean. Sometimes, it's not about winning back your past. It's about securing your future. Winning a lawsuit doesn't feel like winning a trophy. It feels like crawling out of a burning building with your name still intact. After the verdict was announced and the legal circus faded, I didn't throw a party. I didn't pop champagne. I went home, closed my apartment door, sank onto the floor, and sobbed. Not just because I'd won, but because for the first time in over a year, I could finally breathe. The first lesson I learned? Victory doesn't erase the damage. Sure, Brielle lost her funding, her company, and her public image. But I lost something too, time. Time I'd spent second-guessing myself. Time spent repairing my reputation, rebuilding my spirit, and defending something I had created with love. I wish I could say I bounced back instantly. That the $8.1 million judgment wired straight into my bank account and I danced all the way to the App Store launch. But that's not how reality works. Litigation eats your soul a little at a time. It wears on your confidence. And even when you win, it leaves behind a shadow. So I started from the ground up, again. Only this time, wiser. And armed with knowledge. I rebuilt PitchPair, brick by brick. This time, everything was airtight. Contracts signed. NDAs enforced. Copyright filings updated. Tech audited. And I hired a fractional CTO to oversee product integrity with military-grade oversight. I wasn't just a solo founder anymore. I was the CEO of a vision protected by scars. The support from the creator and startup communities was overwhelming. Emails, DMs, tweets. Thousands of messages from people who had been burned before but never had the evidence, or the resources, or the fight to go all the way. Some of them simply wrote, "Thank you for not letting her get away with it." One afternoon, I got a message that hit differently. It was from a 19-year-old girl at a community college in Tulsa. "I watched your story on YouTube. I just started working on a fintech app, and your fight made me buy a $30 NDA template online before pitching to anyone. I know it's not ironclad, but it's a start. Thank you for showing me that protecting my work is worth it." I cried again. This time not out of fear, but from the realization that my pain had become someone else's protection. Here's what I tell every founder, dreamer, and creator now. Document everything. Every note, every sketch, every brainstorm session. Save it. Timestamp it. Back it up. Your future self will thank you. Trust is earned, not owed. Just because someone seems nice, smart, or successful doesn't mean they deserve access to your intellectual property. Get it in writing. Always. Verbal promises, coffee shop handshakes, vibes. None of these protect you in court. Protect your mental health. Burnout doesn't just kill productivity. It warps your sense of value. Therapy was as essential to my recovery as legal counsel was. Revenge isn't the goal. Clarity is. I didn't fight Brielle to ruin her. I fought her to reclaim myself. Ironically, the lawsuit made PitchPair more appealing to investors than I'd ever imagined. Once the dust settled, the very firms who ghosted me during the trial came back around. A few even apologized for choosing the louder voice over the truthful one. I didn't hold a grudge. I just chose new investors. People who had integrity. People who saw the future. Not just the flash. We secured a modest $1.3 million pre-seed round from ethical, female-led VC firms. And this time, the cap table was built with care. I didn't chase unicorn status. I chased impact. PitchPair launched 6 months later, with full media transparency about its origins, its growth, and my battle to protect it. Within the first year, we onboarded 1,200 creators, matched over 400 campaigns, and helped small brands generate over $2.4 million in influencer-led sales. It wasn't just a win. It was validation. And Brielle? Last I heard, she left the country for a sabbatical. She's off social media. Her LinkedIn went dark. There were whispers of another venture overseas, but she's radioactive in Silicon Valley now. No one wants to touch a fraud who got publicly crushed by a founder half her network size. That wasn't my doing. That was karma. Encrypted. Today, my mornings look different. There's less panic, more clarity. My desk isn't covered in cease and desist drafts. It's filled with product mock-ups and campaign reports. I still have Jasper, my cat, now sleeping on a blanket that says, CEO's assistant. I speak at panels now, sometimes at the very events I once sat in the audience for. I tell my story not to relive it, but to release it. Because my story isn't about Brielle. It's about me, and every underdog who's ever been dismissed, stolen from, or underestimated. In Chapter 6, I'll share how I used the experience to create a startup culture unlike anything in the ecosystem. One rooted in transparency, equity, and fierce creator-first values. You'll see what happened when karma finally paid dividends, and how I made sure no one in my orbit ever had to fight like I did. When you've been burned down to nothing, you don't rebuild the same house. You build one with fireproof walls, and then you leave the door open for others. That's exactly what I did with PitchPair. This wasn't just a startup I launched. It became a living statement. A loud, unapologetic, "You will not erase me." But what made it matter most wasn't the tech. It was the culture. The way we chose to do business differently, because I knew what it felt like to be chewed up by a system built for sharks. I was never going to become one of them. The first rule of PitchPair: transparency isn't a buzzword. It's our baseline. Every team member, contractor, and even brand partner signs a mutual transparency clause. No buried clauses. No predatory terms. Everyone knows what they're building, what they own, and how their voice fits into the puzzle. The very first developer I hired, Sophia, told me after onboarding, "This is the first place where I feel like I'm not being tricked into building someone else's empire." I knew exactly what she meant. The second rule: credit is currency. And we pay it, loudly. Each campaign our platform matches includes an embedded attribution map, so creators can see who influenced success. Whether you're a TikTok micro-influencer or a graphic designer who helped build a mock-up, your name gets archived with the win. We even publish invisible impact reports each quarter, tracking behind-the-scenes contributions that usually go unnoticed in startup land. From interns to testers to bug reporters, they all get thanked. Because too many people get cut out of their own story. And I refuse to repeat that crime. The third rule: this company doesn't chase exits. It builds ecosystems. Yes, investors are important, but legacy is essential. I turned down a buyout offer within our first year. $9 million on the table. From a massive agency group that wanted to absorb our algorithm into their internal tools. But they wanted my team to sign over ownership. They wanted NDAs. They wanted silence. I politely declined. Because silence is what got me stolen from in the first place. PitchPair became profitable in year 2. Modestly, ethically, and steadily. We focused on ethical brand matching, AI that didn't just favor big numbers, and platforms that elevated authentic alignment over clout. And the press took notice. PitchPair sets a new standard for creator partnerships. From IP lawsuit to industry blueprint. Claire Winter's redemption startup. But the headline that moved me most? Her idea was stolen. Now her culture is being duplicated for all the right reasons. I was invited to speak at Stanford. Then MIT. Then South by Southwest. Each time, I stood on stage and told my story. Not for applause, but for awareness. I showed screenshots. Contracts. Emails. I taught founders how to watermark MVPs, how to file provisional patents, how to vet collaborators. And after every panel, the line to speak with me grew longer. Some with tears. Some with ideas. Some with notebooks full of fear. They all said the same thing. I thought I was alone until I heard you. One girl, no older than 17, handed me a flash drive in a brown envelope. She whispered, "This is my prototype. I don't trust anyone. But I trust you. I don't cry easily anymore. But I did then. Because when you survive theft, you don't just heal your own wounds. You build bridges for others who are still bleeding." Even my old mentors, the ones who once said I had series of potential, reached back out. One sent a short email that read, "You were right. I'm sorry I didn't back you sooner. But damn if I'm not proud of you now." I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need his permission anymore. I had become the validation. And Brielle? She never apologized. But word got around that she tried to launch a coaching course abroad, how to build $1 million startup. It failed. Miserably. People remembered. Because the truth has legs. And when it finally stands up, it doesn't sit down again. Now, I mentor underdog founders. I back early-stage women building big things from small places. I sit on advisory boards that protect creator IP. But most days, I'm just Claire, the founder who got robbed, and then rebuilt a company so strong, it became untouchable. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for listening, but for witnessing. I hope my story reminds you that even when your name gets dragged through the mud, you can still polish it into gold. Because sometimes, the world tries to erase the wrong person. And sometimes, that person rises, bolder, brighter, and backed by an army of truth. I didn't just get justice. I got everything I deserved, and then some. And I'll make sure nobody else has to fight like I did. Unless they want me in their corner. Because now, I have the tools. I have the team. And I have the fireproof walls. This is Claire Winters. And this was Karma Encrypted.